Hey guys, Kyle, the Death Knight of Anime here, bringing you my review for Fire Force Season 2, Episode 19. So, the episode this week, as you could tell just from the title, was largely focused on Maki and the relationship she pretty much has with her family and specifically her father, which, following what I said last week, it's episodes like this that really showcase, I think, the strength of the series. When it dives into the personal lives of the characters and gives us just greater perspective on what motivates them, but also dives into the parts of their life they wouldn't necessarily share publicly, even with the people they work closely with. And in Maki's case, for Maki, it's always been about walking the thin line between her personal and professional life in terms of her dedication to the Fire Force while still trying to maintain a stable relationship with her father and brother, which, on that note, who she still genuinely loves despite their disapproval of the separate path that she chose from theirs, and she tries, and through that, and through that though, she pretty much tries to just kind of, you can pretty much see where her mentality of always trying to please people comes from, and and you see how that dynamic of trying to please her family has just crossed over into trying to into her professional life. So like this is one of those and it's one of those dynamics throughout the episode is a prime example of how to show both sides of an argument, because the thing is, like, for Maki, the Fire Force represents freedom from the Fire Force represents her semblance, the first semblance of true freedom she's ever felt from being from she's the first sense of true freedom she's ever felt from her family's legacy, but at the same time, but at the same time, by being strong armed into rejoining the military, she just kind of she pretty much fell back into that trap of just letting herself be shackled to her family's legacy. But and so it's one of those things where, on one hand, she basically is right in the sense where the Fire Force is the place she's felt the most free. But on the other hand, despite letting herself being strong armed to rejoin the military, her father and Hinuma aren't exactly wrong. Her father and Hinuma, while not entirely in the right by forcing Maki to rejoin the military, they weren't entirely in the wrong either, if you look at it from the perspective that they just wanted to protect her from the fallout that's sure to come from the Eight's recent actions and the danger that lies ahead. Although, in Hiuma's case, you could also say what he did was a necessary step for her to finally find her own conviction over pretty much going along with whatever everyone tells her to do. Like, that's pretty much the biggest problem that's the biggest problem that Maki faces right now. It is that this whole experience for her is about finding her own conviction and her own beliefs and her own path in order that isn't tied to just blind to just blindly following others, or just trying to find or just trying to find any sort of any sort of validation from others. She needs to find her own path now. That's what this episode was about. And even though it's a small detail, one thing I appreciated that reinforces this is that the whole investigation scene within the Nether and the subsequent suicide bombing not only shows just how far the White Cloud will go to protect their secrets until that day when their plan is ready, but the fact that they are becoming that brazen at all shows just how close their plans are to completion. So while it is becoming more dangerous, it is also a nice not so subtle but yet not so subtle way to show that the Fire Force is at a point where they need any and every able body necessary they can get, and just how important, and it also reinforces in that respect just how important Hinuma's little test to Maki actually is. They need Maki. The Fire Force Company 8 needs Maki, but she can't be indecisive. That's her biggest. That's Maki's biggest flaw is her nature of being indecisive. And this is what that test is about, is her just making a decision. What does she want to do? What does her convictions tell her to do? But so and on this, so it's like, so Maki is a necessary piece, is a necessary fighter for the future of protecting the Tokyo Empire, but unfortunately she needs to know what she wants to do, not what others tell her to do. um On an aside, though, I love how we get an idea of where Maki's temper comes from seeing her mother's outburst at the dinner table. Like, to me, just from seeing the very quiet and just seeing Maki's very quiet and timid mother just kind of very quietly just eat her supper while her family argues, but then just kind of blows up in their faces like, "Quiet down, you motherfuckers! Sit down and eat supper." Like, yeah, that's one of those very hilarious things where that's where Maki gets it. It's like, yeah, that whole shit, it was hilarious. Um, Now, when it comes to animation this week, it was pretty standard, honestly. Again, it's one of those times where there wasn't a whole lot of action going on in the episode, so there wasn't a whole lot in order to blow an actual major budget, I guess. But 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 there's one little detail I really like in this episode, which is that every time that they would cut to a close up on pretty much General Oze's face, they presented in a black bar format with his eyebrows with his eyebrows like being outside the bars and like twitching outside the bars. Like, it's probably like a nonsensical detail that I can't believe I'm talking about, but but it's one of those small details, and it's one of those small details you don't think about, but when you see when you see the idea of of having those eyebrows outside the bars, it's it's one of those things where when you see it in execution, it not only acts as a funny little running joke throughout the episode, but it is a unique method to get more facial emotion out of someone like from General Oze, who's practically stone faced in every moment he's on screen. Like, if you think about it, the whole thing with the eyebrows in this episode, it is a very unique way in order to get some actual facial expression out of a guy who's so freaking stone faced you can't tell whether he's happy or sad, happy or mad. Like, yeah, it is it is kind of a unique method for it, for sure. Um, and aside from that, though, I guess now I have heard when I watched this episode, I did see a lot of people claim it to be like a very boring episode, and well, and as you can tell just from how much I've talked about this episode, I don't think that's the case. However, there is one moment where I can agree that the whole episode did kind of feel like it sped to a bit of a halt, which is when we cut back to that little moment in the eighth where everyone was just kind of talking about, where everyone was just kind of like just goofing off and just kind of talking about how pretty much Maki was, how Maki was gone, how it didn't feel the same with Maki gone, and it's one of those things where it was still a necessary scene, I think, in order to show her, just the effect the eighth had on Maki being gone. But at the same time, if you were to find faults with like any slow part of the episode, I do admit that is probably the slowest part of the episode for sure. Even I can admit it. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Mr. Crunchyroll. Death Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, guys.